Today I'm going to be talking about Dante Gabriel Rossetti and the Blessed Damozel. A little bit about Rossetti first. He was born Gabriel Charles Dante Rossetti, and later in his life he changed the order of his names because he was obsessed with the great Italian poet like of the 1300s. Dante Alighieri, who wrote Dante's Inferno. And so he changed the order of his name to Dante Gabriel, just to kind of show kinsman or kinship, I guess, with Alighieri. He was born in London, 1828, to Italian. Well, his dad was Italian, his mom was half Italian. His dad was an Italian patriot who was kicked out or exiled from Naples for his political activity. And he was a Dante scholar, a Dante Alighieri scholar as well. He became a professor of Italian at King's College in London in 1831, and his wife was half Italian, and she raised their children. So they had Maria, Dante, William Michael, and Christina, and she raised her children to be fluent in both English and Italian. They lived in this very large expatriate community in London, Italian expatriate community. They weren't a very wealthy family, but they did have a comfortable upbringing, until the professor's eyesight and health began to deteriorate in the 1840s. Dante attended King's College School, 1837 to 1842, and he left because he intended to go to the Royal Academy, to the Carey's Academy of Art at the Royal Academy, and study art. And so he wanted to take some time and kind of prepare for that. And so he does get accepted into the Royal Academy, but he only stays a year before he was kind of dissatisfied with the education. He really wanted to kind of study art on his own terms and what he was interested in. And so he left the academy to be an apprentice to the artist Ford Madox Brown, who was an English painter. In 1848, Rossetti and two other painters of the time period, William Holman Hunt and John Everett Millais, began to call themselves the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. And they kind of started this little club, and it kind of attracted other young painters and poets and critics. So this brotherhood aim was to kind of revive British art. They wanted to kind of throw back to the Renaissance, the early Renaissance time period of art, before the Italian artist Raphael, who was a prominent painter in the late Renaissance. They kind of wanted to throw it back to the time before he was a painter. They kind of didn't like the way that art had kind of taken a turn after, or with Raphael and after that. And they wanted to be able to express, nature, true emotions in art. And so this little brotherhood kind of had a little bit of a following. In the late 1840s, he started exhibiting his paintings. He met Elizabeth Eleanor Siddall, who became one of his models for his art. And he fell in love with her. He called her Lizzie, and she would eventually become his wife. She committed suicide in 1862. She overdosed on morphia after she lost her child. And Rossetti kind of never really kind of recovered from that because he did love her very much. He buried her, and with her, he included in her in her casket or her tomb, or I'm not really 100% sure which of the two. But he buried that manuscript of his poems, a finished manuscript of his poems, with her body. After she died, he moved to Chelsea, to a large house on the Thames River, where he continued painting. He was writing poetry. He was getting patrons that were paying him to create art. He became relatively prosperous. And he started painting a little bit differently. Like, he kind of switched gears in his artwork. And started painting more of his mistresses than he was working on, like, whereas before, like, he was painting kind of themes from literature that he enjoyed reading while he was growing up. But now he kind of switches to painting his mistresses in art. One of his models, Fanny Cornworth, who appears in 3 of his paintings, became his mistress and his housekeeper there in the house on the Thames River. He published a book of translations, The Early Italian Poets, in 1860, and so he started writing again. He decided to exhume his manuscript from the body of his dead lover, his dead wife, Elizabeth Siddall, and then he published them in 1870 under the title Poems. Catchy title, right? This new painting, this new art that he was creating, was kind of like more aesthetic. It was more sensuous than he had been painting before. And it was during this time that his choice of models kind of helped change the concept of feminine beauty during the Victorian period. Tall, thin, long-necked, long-haired women. They were weak-looking, frail health looking, that we see a lot in the time period, that art from the time period. In the late the late 1860s, he began to suffer from headaches and from weakened eyesight, and he began to take chloral, which was like let's say in chloroform, like it's not good stuff. It was wreaking havoc on his body, but he would mix it with whiskey to help him sleep at night. But the chloral actually accentuated his depression, his paranoia, and he was like, in 1872, he had like a full mental breakdown. He was hearing voices. He was hallucinating. He left, or was taken actually, to Scotland. He tried to commit suicide. He failed. It was a failed attempt, but he recovered. And within a few months, he was able to start painting again. And he died of kidney failure in 1882, in April of 1882. Today, I want to talk about the Blessed Damozel. And in my text notes, I included a picture of the Blessed Damozel, which was the art piece that accompanies the poem. And it's a traditional ballad. It's dedicated to the love between a woman who is trapped in heaven and a man who is stuck on earth. It alternates between iambic tetrameter and iambic trimeter. And each stanza is a sestet, so that means there's 6 lines in each stanza. The rhyme scheme is A, B, C, B, D, B. A, B, C, B, D, B. Okay, every single sestet. All right, let's take a look at this poem, the Blessed Damozel. Let's blitz through it really quick. The Blessed Damozel leaned out from the gold bar of heaven. Her eyes were deeper than the depth of water stilled at even. She had 3 lilies in her hand, and the stars in her hair were 7. Her robe, ungirt from clasp to hem, no wrought flowers did adorn, but a white rose of Mary's gift for service meetly worn. Her hair that lay along her back was yellow like ripe corn. Her seemed she scarce had been a day one of God's choristers. The wonder was not yet quite gone from that still look of hers, albeit to them she left her days had counted as 10 years. So our speaker starts out by describing this Blessed Damozel. It's damsel, an alternate spelling, which is a young unmarried woman. She is in heaven. She's leaning out over a wall, and kind of looking or attempting to look down to earth. The narrator can like see into her eyes. He discerns that they're deeper than the depths of still water. She's extraordinarily interesting to our speaker. She's beautiful, and those deep eyes, infinitely deep eyes. And he's kind of giving some more detail as he kind of goes on here. She's holding 3 lilies in her hand, and she has 7 stars scattered throughout her hair, which represent the 7 classical planets. This woman is human in some ways, but she's closer to God now than a normal person would be, and is directly related to the sky. And we see that in the imagery of the stars in the depths of her eyes too as well. She's passed on. She's in heaven with God, and she's sad. She's pining for someone that she left behind. So he continues on in stanza 2 there, talking about her dress. It's very loose. He uses the word ungirt, so that means it's loose. It's not tightened around her waist. She doesn't have any decorations on her dress like you would expect. It's not covered in flowers. It's not adorned in any way, aside from the white rose of Mary's gifts, which is a direct reference to Christianity. Virgin Mary is often represented as a white rose, and she's referred to as the rose of heaven. Then her hair as well, which is kind of an interesting connection there. Her hair, for an unmarried woman to have her hair loose and flowing around and cast about, it was just kind of considered improper. It kind of does not follow like Christian teaching. Hair at the time was kind of seen as the embodiment of sexuality, and to have it loose and spread out and flowing is not proper for an unmarried woman. A married woman could wear her hair loose, but an unmarried woman, that was not the case. And the woman, it seems to her, the way that she is appearing, that she's just gotten there, because she has a look of wonder on her face, as if she's like taking everything in and just kind of amazed by all she sees. But in reality, she's been there already for 10 years. The fourth stanza switches to a different perspective. To 1, it is 10 years of years, yet now and in this place, surely she leaned o'er me, her hair fell all about my face, nothing, the autumn fall of leaves, the whole year sets apace. So it's switching from a different perspective, and that's the lover that she's left behind. He's here on earth, and he's mourning for her absence, and to him it seems like she's been gone forever, much longer than 10 years, but he still remembers it so well. And at this particular moment, she seems so close to him that it's her hair is like draping and falling all about his face. Which we realize there at the end of that stanza, it's not really her hair, it's the falling of the leaves from the trees. He's sitting outside, he's daydreaming about his love, and he kind of got caught up in the fantasy, and he realized, reality kind of sets back in. So I'm going to stop this screencast here, and I'll pick back up with part 2 of the Blessed Damozel.